Hi, I'm Stephanie from Together Farms.
And I'm Amy Huo, and I am the executive chef here at the Informalist. Welcome. Stephanie and I met each other a few years ago when I moved back to Wisconsin and wanted to get into the sustainable farming scene. I've been working with her meats for a few years now, and I am lucky enough at this point to actually have them in a restaurant that I run. So we're pretty excited to have all of you here and share our secrets and tips for cooking farm to table at home.
And it's also really easy to source local ingredients. I know our farm has lots of different drop sites all over Minnesota and Wisconsin. We actually even have a drop site right here at the Informalist. So if you decide that you want to try using some of our Braunschweiger or try using some of our other meats that you might see on their menu or other places, you can just go onto our website and order, and I can bring it right here to the Informalist for you.
So today we are going to use some of Stephanie's amazing Braunschweiger that she has processed. Here, I have some right here. And we are gonna do something new that I haven't seen done, but maybe will be done more in the future. I'm gonna make some raviolis out of it.
Now, quite frankly, I'm one of those people that's really scared of pasta, so I'm really glad that Amy is doing it because it's really only a couple of ingredients, and once you get a feel for it, you are probably never going to buy store-bought pasta again because it's so easy to do. And then you can get our Braunschweiger to put in it and recreate one of these fancy farm-to-table dishes like you can have at the Informalist right at your own home.
Totally. Let's do this.
Let's do it.
So we're gonna start by making our pasta. I have a few different flours here that I like to use. These are all from Lonesome Stone. You can see here that they actually know exactly what field that they actually get the wheat from, which is super exciting. I love that. So I've got some high protein whole wheat bread flour. That's more for the texture. It looks like this. It's a little bit more grainy, and you can see like the bran in it and everything. And then we have some sifted bread flour, which is a little bit lighter, and that will give us a little bit better of a texture. So you can see it right here. It's a little bit finer, and they sifted out some of the bran, so it's a little bit easier to work with. And then I also have the sifted pastry flour that's even more fine. So this is kind of like if you got some all-purpose flour from the store, this would be similar to that. And you can see right here, it's nice and powdery and fine. It's very easy to use, and it sort of sticks to your fingers. Making pasta is a labor of love, everybody knows that. But once you do it a few times, you get kind of used to the texture that you want. So you have to be kind of patient with yourself. I know it sounds really difficult, but I promise once you start doing it, you won't want to do it any other way. So I have my 3 different kinds of flours. You can use whatever flour you want. You just need to work with it and figure out what's best for you. I'm gonna use a little bit of this one for the flavor and a little bit of the texture. I'm just gonna go right on my board, right on the table, whatever you have going on. We use a little more of the pastry flour because it's a little bit more fine. And then this one is kind of in between. So we just have a pile of our flours here. We want to make sure to add some salt. And then we kind of want to mix it together just with our hands. A lot of people use a fork for this. I'm just more comfortable using my hands, so I don't have trouble doing that. And then we add our eggs right in the middle. We get our eggs from also a local producer, so they're nice and yellow. You can see the yolks there. They've got lots of vitamins and minerals in them. They're just really tasty and great. They add a lot. And then I have right here some of Stephanie's amazing pork fat that we rendered out. It gives the pasta even more of a rich flavor, and it's really delicious. So we'll add just a little bit of that. Usually here people would add olive oil, but we're gonna do pork fat because we really love that local stuff. All right, so now all we wanna do is take our hands, just kind of break up our eggs. The whites are a little bit coagulated. We just wanna kind of mix it around like this. And if you can see this part right here, the eggs are a little scrambled and everything's kind of mixed up together. You just gotta be a little patient and go around in a circle just like this. Just kind of work your flour in. You got a nice dam of flour around to keep your eggs in and everything. Just kind of mix it in just like that. All right, so eventually kind of get it to stick together like a mass like that. And then you're gonna knead it a little bit. If you made bread before, this is gonna be something that you're used to. The great part about all these flours is they will kind of absorb as much liquid as they want to absorb. You don't really need to like measure it too hard because you'll be able to feel it. And now I've got my ball forming right now, so I just knead it. And it will absorb more flour as it needs to. You don't need to worry too much about that. But you do like to make a mess. All right, so if you can see here, my ball is nice and formed. But if you try to break it apart right here, it's not really sticking together too well, so we need to develop the gluten just a little bit more. All right, so if we press our fingers in a little bit and it kind of bounces back a little bit like that, then we know that the gluten is developed. And we can let it rest for a little bit and then roll it out. We've let our pasta kind of rest for a little bit. If you have any kind of like roller, you can get one for a KitchenAid or something like that. It's a lot easier to use those, but you can also just use a regular rolling pin. It'll make it a little bit more rustic. So they'll be a little thicker, but I don't know, it doesn't seem to bother me too much, so probably won't bother you. So what you want to do, make sure you have enough of your flour down right here. You just keep rolling it out and rotating it. You want to rotate it so it doesn't stick to your table too much. And you can see it contracting just a little bit there. Now if you have a sheet like this, you can make a choice. You can either split it in half this way and put your filling, or you can just fold it over, depending on what's easier for you. Doesn't really make a difference. It's kind of a personal choice. I usually like to do mine in strips just because it's easier to work with. So we'll split this right in half. Either you can leave it in a ball like this and just roll it out later, or you can roll it out right away and cover it. It's kind of up to you and what your schedule is. You can do this a day ahead of time. It can sit in your fridge, kind of like, whatever you have time for. We're gonna do this all today, so we'll just wrap it a little loosely so it doesn't get too dry. So now I'm gonna take amazing Braunschweiger. If you've never had Braunschweiger, if you've had pate, you really need to try it. It's wonderful. And this one has no added weird stuff, as Stephanie likes to say. It doesn't have any fillers in it that are artificial. It's only got the pure pork liver flavor of it. It's got a few seasonings in it, but if you read the label, it's nothing that you don't recognize, which I love a lot. So we'll start out with I think this is a half a pound, right? Yeah, close to half a pound. Her packages all come in at half a pound. It's really great for single servings of, whatever you need for a party or something like that. You can use it just like a pate. I just like to put a special touch on it and use it a little bit differently. I have some amazing local cream here that I'm going to add to our filling just to loosen it up just a tad, because we want it to be able to scoop it out into our pasta. So we just kind of mix it in a little bit. So we got our Braunschweiger kind of broken up. And then this is some ricotta that I made a couple days ago from a local milk producer. So I add some of that. All right, then we're going to add a couple eggs. Cool, this looks pretty good. All right, we're gonna add a little bit of salt because even though the Braunschweiger has some salt in it, our cream and our eggs will have diluted that, so we're gonna add a little bit more back, maybe a teaspoon or so. And that's about it. Just looks like that. Very simple. So let's assemble our raviolis. Okay, so we've got our dough and we've got our filling. All right, let's do this. So we've got our pasta here. It's a little bit dried out. We want to maybe brush a little bit of water onto it so that we make sure it sticks together when we put our filling in. Just have a pastry brush right here. It's kind of important to do this a little bit quickly because if the water soaks through the bottom, it'll stick to your table and then it'll be really difficult and it'll sort of rip apart. So this is the only part that you need to keep an eye on. So I put a bunch of filling on there. Maybe we can fit 3 on here, I think. All right. And then we've got our other piece of dough. We just sort of layer that on top. This is super important. You want to make sure not to have air bubbles. So you kind of got to press around your filling just a little bit. Kind of push your dough together like that. Put a little more flour down at the bottom. And we'll get our bench scraper. These are super handy tools if you're gonna make your pasta at home. Otherwise, you can use a knife, whatever you've got. So we're just gonna cut the excess of our dough around and make sure we crimp the edges of our raviolis. Nobody likes a watery Braunschweiger ravioli, I'll tell you that. Okay. So we've got a big square ravioli. If you got a pasta crimper, one of the ones that roll, that'll make it super easy. Otherwise, fork works the best way. Right around the edge, just like this. This would be super fun for kids to do at home too. They don't have to be perfect. You can cut them into any kind of shape. I think kids would get a big kick out of doing this. Here you go. Nice big massive ravioli. All right. So once you've got these all assembled, you can stick them in the fridge for a couple days or something. They could even dry out a little bit and you can keep them for longer. Just got to make sure that you put enough flour on the bottom so they don't stick to your sheet tray or whatever you've got in your fridge. And then we'll be ready to cook them off. Okay, so we have our water boiling over here. We want to make sure that our water is very well salted. You can also just drop them in just like this. All right. So these take a little bit to boil. The pasta around the edge is going to be a little bit thicker, so it'll take a little bit more time. But you don't want to overcook them because the filling will get a little bit grainy. The Braunschweiger is already cooked, so you don't want to cook it too much. You just want enough to have the eggs set up the filling and be solid enough to hold. So we'll let these boil for a little bit. And then in the meantime, I'll tell you what I'm going to do after that. So I've got my raviolis going, and who doesn't love liver and onions? I feel like that's a thing that people used to love. My parents used to love liver and onions. So in this pan right here, we're going to do some caramelized onions, and I'm going to throw in some local greens that we got. This is what tot soy looks like. Really beautiful green. And then I have a little spinach also. So we've got a little bit more of that wonderful pork fat rendered off from the lard that Stephanie gives us. We're just going to pour a little of that in the pan. Just got some red onion here. It's just sliced pretty thin. So our onions are caramelizing a little bit. I might have found just a little bit of bourbon down here. I'll just add another layer of flavor. You can add it if you want to. If you don't want to, no big deal. All right, those are looking good. Now, we don't want to cook our greens too much because they're so fresh. We just want to add them sort of at the last minute. So we're just going to add a little bit of our spinach. Going to add a little bit of our tot soy. A little salt. All right, cool. And we'll leave those right there. Looks like our raviolis should be done. They look pretty close. All we want to do is just toss them with a little bit of butter in our pan. Grab our raviolis out. Oh, look at that. Beautiful. All right, toss those around a little bit. And we'll move those off. We're ready to plate. Let's make a beautiful plate. We have our plate, our Braunschweiger raviolis with some caramelized onions, tatsoi, and spinach. The last thing we can do, and you can do this at home also, you can get microgreens at any one of your local grocery stores. I know that Woodman's for sure has them. It's just a beautiful mix. As you can see, some herbs and some different stuff. Add our little fresh herbs on. All right, there you have it. Braunschweiger raviolis, caramelized onions, tatsoi, and spinach. A little maple syrup. Don't tell anyone, it's my secret. Beautiful plate.